Welcome to the Amiga Ireland podcast for January. I'm Irla.
I'm Rob.
I'm Luke.
How has everybody been, guys? How's your Christmas been?
Lots of drinking, lots of hanging out with family and friends, that kind of stuff, yeah. How's yours?
Mine has been nice. We took off to Tenerife for a bit of heat to get some warmth into our bones, and we it was nice. We had a few illnesses and stuff like that kind of tripped us up a bit, but yeah, I'm hoping to meet with Johnny, who has released Dreams of Rowan just a few days ago. So hopefully we can meet before I go back. Yeah, so I'm dreading going back to the cold, but can't complain.
Right, for me, I've been just browsing forums and reading the news. Apart from that, doing a bit of summary of the year, so thinking about what went wrong, what was right, and stuff like that, you know.
Interesting.
So, yeah, it's the end of the year, so I think about it, you know. Right.
So, did you get up to anything, Rob?
Well, because we're over in Ireland at the moment, we've been shuffling the baby between one set of parents and the other, and trying to meet up with everyone who wants to see the baby and all that kind of stuff. So it's been a pretty hectic time. Before I left Glasgow, I was working on some Amiga stuff to keep me busy. I've got most of the parts together for a second batch of my A500 Zorro boards, and I'm also been working on the designs for a board for the Checkmate A500 case, which is something that's been worked on. Stephen Jones is working on, so I'm giving him a hand with that. Still a bit away yet, but that's been keeping me busy.
Jeez, I'll bet. Nice one.
Yeah.
So, have you any New Year's resolutions? I bet you do, Luke.
Well, to be honest, I'm in the middle of doing that, so I'll, restrain myself from telling anything, to be honest, at the moment. Perhaps in next episode.
I haven't actually decided quite yet myself, although something to do with work-life balance, definitely.
Yeah.
That's the thing that I think of as well, to be honest, but let's leave it for the next episode, perhaps.
Let's move on to the news. An FM receiver for Commodore 64 has been released, and it was reported by vintageisthenewOld.com. So this is a new sound cartridge for the Commodore 64, and you can reserve one at the moment or order it. And it's called FM Yam. It brings 9 FM music channels to the Commodore 64 and allows easy mixing with the 3 SID channels. It's based on the old Commodore SFX sound expander. Different software is needed to compose for the FM part, but these are listed on the site, and it's going to be around €40, it seems. So it'll be interesting to see what comes from this, because there's already a really good music scene on the Commodore 64. So I'd be curious to see what people do with this.
Nice one. Nice. Roadshow has been now also available as a CD version. Roadshow is a TCP/IP stack. I'm pretty sure, guys, you all know that. I consider it the best TCP/IP stack for Amiga, to be honest. It is available in 2 versions in the online shop. Of course, the download version is still available, and the CD version. And the price of an upgrade, for example, the CD version is around $4.90 plus shipping cost. So if you like box or you like boxed things, it might be really tempting to get one and to support Andres and Olaf Bartel. Both of these guys have done a magnificent job regarding this piece of software.
Yeah, they really did.
Yeah,
it seems to be fast becoming the most popular one on 68K.
Because it's very light and very easy to configure and nearly transparent.
Yeah, and has DHCP support, which is kind of
really good one.
Very handy, very nice to have.
Mm-hmm.
It's the standard TCP stack in OS4 as well. It's the one that's built in.
Oh yes, that's right. You can use it also, on MorphOS, as far as I remember. Some people's been using,
Should work,
on MorphOS too. Yeah.
And I remember when I was toying around with it, when I was setting up the networking stuff with you that time and you were helping me, the messages that came up looked really familiar to me. And when I went searching online, they're actually the exact same messages you get on the Linux networking one when you're, whether you get a failure or a success or all that. So I think there's a certain amount of porting from the Linux open source network manager going on. The config files have the same names and they're in similar locations and stuff. So it's amazing that they've done that.
And it is very helpful. I think BSD as well has got it.
Yeah, I think they all stem from BSD at one stage or another, don't they?
I think they all stem, from BSD, as well.
Okay.
So, similar roots.
Mm-hmm. Now, a lot of people will know the load module program, which is used for loading reset resident modules for, replacing ROM modules like CPU libraries, device drivers, that kind of thing. Thomas Richter has released a new version of load module. The minor update fixes a few things, and it's great to see that it's still being worked on. And it's especially for people who like to, push their classics as far as they can go with, massively customized OS 3.9 setups, for example. But it lets you choose exactly what modules from the ROM replacement to use and lets you chop and change them, and then they're available from reboot. And it's a lot of people with those kind of setups would say it's pretty essential stuff. But yeah, it's great to see it still being developed.
I really like this program actually now, because I use it on a daily basis. And for example, I always load, for example, Workbench library, SESI device, and icon library, which is really, really helpful and speeds up the system enormously.
Yeah. So, and there are so many modules because it does essentially what the set patch does for OS 3.9, but it lets you do pretty much any module rather than the specific ones that 3.9 changes out. So it's very flexible and very powerful. It's really good.
More updates and pictures regarding the upcoming Iris Morphos email client have been released. We mentioned this not too long ago, and now we have screenshots of the mail client connecting with Gmail and Outlook.com accounts. The developer has said that Iris is multi-threaded at its core, and it's mostly IMAP oriented with minimal support for POP3 servers. So because of that, there's currently no way of importing emails from other email clients. There's no local storage for emails, at least not yet. So Simple Mail and Yam have reputations for not having perfect IMAP support, so this is pretty good news for people who want to use particularly multiple accounts anyway. And for those of you who don't know, IMAP basically means that unlike older methods of connecting with your mail server like POP3, your email client shows an exact representation of your email account. And if you delete something on your computer, on your email program, it's gone from the server too, and vice versa. So they're completely in sync and you really don't need to do much with it. But when the older email programs were created, POP3 was the main method, and that one had, was copying emails across and back from the server. And, if you created a draft on yours, then that got copied. So all kinds of synchronization issues were pretty normal then. So a good IMAP implementation will be a huge boost for people who want to do email on the Amiga.
Absolutely good program, and I think finally MorphOS and the Amiga flavor will have a pretty decent email client.
Like one of the key things with IMAP that that sets it apart is using it in more than one place, because POP3 works pretty much fine. It does everything you need to do if you have one computer that you use for your email. But if you have like a Gmail account and you have it connected to your phone, you have it, you access it in work, you access it, at home. They all have to be synchronized in much more detail, and that's where IMAP comes into its own. So it doesn't leave you stranded on one machine, basically. So it'd be really good to see that now. That's
a very good point. Yeah.
Right, a developer, David Vissi, has recently released a 68K torrent client for Amiga. Can you believe that, guys?
It's brilliant.
Yeah, it is. It is, actually. I haven't tried it myself, but I've seen the screenshots, and it's still like a better version. It requires a lot of RAM. in general, it is very, very encouraging, and I think another good program has been released.
Yeah, I heard about that, and there were a couple of people actually posting up showing that they're downloading these torrents on their Amigas. It's impressive.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, that's cool. Just need a bigger hard disk now.
That's it, yeah. Somewhere to store all those disk images, yeah. And MMU libs have been updated as well. And this is another update from the load module author, Thomas Richter. And these, again, are considered essential by a lot of people. And what they are sort of a standard interface for the MMU, or the memory management unit, on the higher up 68K processors. So the Amiga OS itself doesn't have an interface for these modules, for these units, but they are included in pretty much all the higher up chips, and they're very useful for some things, especially as a developer. They're used for a lot of debugging tricks, and they can be used for virtual memory. Mac emulators, Fusion, Shapeshifter, use them.
Shapeshifter, yeah.
And they can be used for speeding up access to certain things, and for segregating parts of memory, and there's all sorts of things that they're quite useful for. And the MMU libs packages a set of core libraries, as well as a lot of tools and that to go with that. So this is great again to see that it was updated. I think Thor's had a busy December, but it's only it's a small update. But one of the key things it adds is support for one of the new homebrew graphics cards, which I presume uses the MMU for its driver. So it's something something that would be essential for people using that card. It's one of those things that if you were already using the libraries, and like a lot of people use these libraries as a replacement for the accelerator specific 68040.library and 68060.library. So it includes replacements for those libraries that tend to work on all different accelerators without having to mix and match them. And it's good, because if you are using those, you might have even forgotten that you're using them because they just work. But then you get a new graphics card, you might have problems. I don't know exactly the details of that update because I don't have the graphics card myself. But it's great for new hardware like that it's just sort of being recognised and and supported.
Simple Mail 0.44 has been released, and this version comes with the following changes. Requires AMI SSL 4.1 on Amiga OS 4.1, decreased folder index storage size, and improved the email address auto-completion. So that's available on simplemail.sourceforge.net.
Yeah, this program's been released every Christmas, I think, for the last 10 or 15 years.
Yeah,
am I right?
It sounds familiar, all right, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, there's a lot going on. I was surprised at how much I saw.
Yeah, it is actually amazing, yeah.
If you are interested in Y-Modem 232, then there you go. It's been released as well. And it's Wi-Fi modem connected to your, as far as I remember, parallel port, yeah? And it comes in two versions, with OLED display and without it. The price is pretty decent. If you like BBSing and, you want to feel like in the 80s again, and, try to play war games through your Y modem, then here's a additional, a toy for you.
Yeah, is it a new update of a Sega Mega Drive emulator for 68K. So that's called DGen, which I presume is for Genesis rather than, which is the American name for the Mega Drive. And that is interesting, as, a normal 68K probably won't be powerful enough to even to do anything with the Sega Mega Drive emulator. But, the Vampire users and the emulation users will probably be able to play a lot of the classic games from the Mega Drive with that. That's available on Aminet, but that's an SDL port from the Linux version, which is it means it's not the most efficient of things, but it'll be quite portable and quite compatible.
I wasn't a Mega Drive fan, but there are a couple of games that I wouldn't mind having.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I agree.
There's a couple of classics that you kind of have to have, the Sonic and the whole lot.
Yeah. And speaking of games, actually, these should probably be in the games section now that I think of it, but here we are anyway. Scum VM 2.0 has been ported to OS X4, and there's an installer which also supports a load of games like Full Pipe, Cranston Manor, Ulysses and the Golden Fleece, Time Zone, The Dark Crystal. There's a huge list, actually. There's a load of Sierra games as well. And there's a lot of technical changes. So the link will be there if you want to go in and see everything that's changed, because some of it is low-level stuff. So a nice addition to OS4.
Yeah, Scum VM is excellent. Yeah, I haven't had the luxury of time for playing adventure games recently, but it's very, very good.
I think it's the best, in my opinion. You know, if you like old LucasArts games, and games like Goblins as well. It's just a must. I think I've got I've got installed in nearly on my computers, to be honest. Including my Ubuntu laptop.
Yeah, I have it on my phone.
Oh, you have it on your phone as well, yeah. I used to have it on my iPhone when I was, like using it, and it's just brilliant,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, so O widgets is a collection of widgets, like small little applications that are, little desktop widgets like a clock, calendar, these little, indicator applications usually, and that they're on MorphOS, so they've been released and available now on Aminet and on MorphOS files and all usual places. But they look quite nice, and they have alpha support. So you get proper transparency with the desktop behind it, or with the windows behind it, and there's a nice little selection of widgets in that package there. So it's MorphOS only. It's a similar idea to the side panel on Windows Vista, which I think died a horrible death. But but some of the things can be quite useful. Like particularly the calendar, which is something that I always have on my on my desktop, some form or another.
Mm-hmm. And it looks really nice as well.
They do. They look really, really polished and really nicely done.
Stylish, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Well, we wish RNO widgets better luck than the Windows Vista equivalent.
Absolutely. I should say it's not a reflection on the RNO widgets. That's a Vista problem.
Vista is dead.
Yeah, absolutely.
Gideon Zweitzer has been interviewed, who created the 1541 Ultimate and the Ultimate C64. And that interview is on moreretro.blogspot.com.es. The link is here in the show notes. It's a really nice interview. He talks about how he got involved with Commodore computers, which is a nice story in itself. It's kind of a family story. He had an older brother who got him into programming at an early age. And he talks about what he uses to make his software and hardware too, which is interesting. It's a little bit on the technical side in places, but there is something for everyone in that interview if you're a fan of Commodore 64. Let's go on to the gaming section.
Okay, so this is a very interesting port that we've seen just crop up recently. Quake 3 has now been made to run on a classic Amiga. Now, as you would expect, it needs a pretty beefy Amiga to run it. So it's PowerPC only, and you need 3D accelerated graphics. So so your standard 1200 owners need not apply. But it looks very impressive for the machine it's running on, and it apparently is playable on a Cyberstorm PowerPC. Now it needs a fair chunk of memory, so you really want to have a maxed out machine, and ideally you need one of the ideally what you should have for best results is one of the Sonnet Mac accelerators in a mediator board. And that's a very rare hardware combination indeed, but it's the only way to get like that kind of power into a classic Amiga. So you can get the Sonnets now. They are very rare. They go for crazy money on eBay. But you can get it's the only way to get a G3 or G4 processor into a classic. But it's worth checking out if you do have such a setup. It's crazy that it works at all.
It's impressive, to be honest. It's
really
absolutely impressive. And as far as I remember, I've been following this thread, and they've done a magnificent job. Still it's an alpha version of that port, but runs at a really, really decent speed.
Yeah, it's very impressive.
Yes, it's absolutely impressive. The first alpha version actually required something like 192 megabytes of RAM. So not too bad, but I'm pretty sure a lot of work can be done. As far as I remember, the PC version required the first time I played it, the PC version required 64 megabytes of RAM. So there's still some room for improvement, in my opinion.
Yeah, there's probably a lot to streaming textures and things like that.
Yeah, that's right.
That can be optimized there.
Of course.
Yeah. It's it's impressive that, well, first off, that anyone even tried,
Yeah.
But it's very good.
Doom was actually colourful compared to Quake. Like, it was such a kind of dark, dully environment. Like, but the fact that you had the freedom of movement and the physics, the way you could kind of throw grenades and they'd bounce off walls and stuff, was just amazing.
And we played so much of it in college that we had a CAD lab in DCU that was actually known to everyone in engineering as the Quake lab, because we played so much network Quake in there.
Trust me, it wasn't only engineering. It was
I can imagine,
like English language. There was a computer lab down there, and Quake was installed on every PC down there as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think it was popular on every department.
Yeah.
Impressive.
Yeah.
Let's make a phonetic transcription of that.
You need the deep bass in your voice when you're saying
Yeah.
You can make a modern USB game controller now thanks to a design that's been made available online by FozTex on github.com. The project is called 9pin, and it involves some minor hardware work on a breadboard and compiling some software on the Raspberry Pi. So depending on your comfort level, it could take you between an afternoon and a few weekends. But if you want to connect a modern USB gamepad to your Amiga computer, this will let you do it, and the links will be in the show notes.
And presumably that'll work with Commodore 64 and the old Atari's 8-bits as well, wouldn't it? For the standard joystick stuff anyway.
Yeah, I'd imagine it would work with anything DB9. He said there were some minor differences between certain systems, but I'd say once you've got DB9, you're safe enough.
Yeah, interesting.
A full version of International Karate Ultimate 1.1 has been just released as well. The game itself, do you remember that game, guys? I'm pretty sure you do.
Oh, yeah.
But the game itself's got beautiful backgrounds. As far as I remember, the version from 1986 had like 3 or 4 backgrounds. Down there are like 7 or 6, and every background is so detailed and so polished, so it's just a pleasure to play that game, just to watch the backgrounds.
Modern Vintage Gamer have released a video showing off the Dreams of Rowan. I think we were just chatting about this earlier, but it's a platformer, but it looks really, really good, really well polished, and the music is really good. It looks excellent, really, really does. Now, for that kind of game, the hardware requirements are a little bit high because it seems to need a 030 to get 50 frames a second, but it looks the part, and it'll be really, really interesting to see this when it's finished. It's just this really slick animation. There's a lot of work gone into the presentation. It looks good.
The physical downloads, the box copies, are all sold out, and it's digital only now for the time being.
Right. There you go.
Congratulations then.
Yeah, and Captain Cloudberry for this Commodore 64 has been released as a free download. I had a look at this on YouTube, and the music alone is amazing all the way through. They've got a version of Walking in the Air during the loader. They've Lady Madonna by the Beatles on the menu, and the game itself then is one of those simple kind of mobile OS type games that takes place in the one screen. It's fun to play, looks simple enough, and you're flying a plane to burst balloons without being taken out by obstacles.
Mm-hmm.
Nice one. Another C64 release, Sam's Journey. It's available to buy as well. The game is absolutely magnificent. It looks so polished and looks so nice. No wonder it's been in development for 2 years. But the physics, the graphics, the music, some people has been comparing it to Miami Monsterland. Others been, saying that it's even better. But the best way is to just to find out for yourself. I really encourage everyone to buy this game if you like C64 games, guys.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the hype is big for that one online. There's a lot of positive vibes going around.
Worthy is has just cropped up now, and I've only saw this a day or two ago, but this is a new puzzle game for the Amiga. And this supports for OCS Amigas actually. So the Amiga 1000 and the 500 will be able to run this. And I don't really know very much about it, but a couple of screenshots have just cropped up, and it looks good. The presentation looks good. It looks very colourful, and seems to be either sort of a matching shapes kind of a sort of diamond kind of game. I don't know any more about it than that, but it looks like it could be really, really interesting.
Yeah, it does look interesting. It's like, I'm not a mad gamer, but I actually would like to try it out because it just looks really nice.
It looks like one of those things that you end up saying, just one more game. That's
exactly it, yeah. Okay, on to discoveries.
Irregular Review 4 has been released, and it's been released by Spaceballs. The Spaceballs, the one of the oldest demo scene groups on Amiga scene. It's got a lot of reviews, of the productions, demo scene productions, and apart from that, there are a lot of things about games and parties and the graphic sides and the music side of that magazine is absolutely polished and top notch. So I encourage anyone who's got at least Amiga 500 with 1 megabyte of RAM to read it, to listen to it, to see it. You won't be disappointed, really, if you like the machine especially.
Mm-hmm.
There is a post on Google Plus by Jérôme Plumier about a small neural network that is running on a Commodore 64, and apparently this isn't the first time this has been done. So the Wikipedia definition of a neural network are computer systems inspired by biological neural networks, like what you find in the brain, and these systems learn things by considering examples, generally without being programmed specifically for something. So like anyone that did software engineering, usually in college, or learned to program whatever online or with friends, they learn to program something to do a specific job, and it'll do it exactly that way, and then you'll take out the bugs in case there's some odd kind of race condition or circumstance where it doesn't do it properly and crashes, and then that's it, and it just kind of does what it does, and it can be quite dynamic. But this takes it to a whole new level where it can go off and do all kinds of mad stuff. So you're talking about artificial intelligence. Anyway, so AI basically on the Commodore 64, and this thing takes 100 minutes on the Commodore 64 to train 6 neurons, a 6 neuron net, to implement the difficult exclusive OR function, which is a way of multiplying binary against each other, I suppose is how I would describe it. So you'd have to carry certain bits and all that kind of stuff. That's what I imagine that would be. So while this isn't going to be doing anything extremely powerful, obviously, because the meaningful work that's done with AI is done with really beefy machines and supercomputers and stuff, it's just really interesting to see that it's running on a Commodore 64. It's not something you hear of very often, and be interesting to see if they do come up with a nice little use for it.
Yeah.
Really interesting, I must say. Do you are you familiar, guys, with the notion of core wars as well?
Of what?
Core wars.
Car Wars.
Core.
Oh, core.
Like
core.
core. Dewey guy named Dewey, I think, if I'm pronouncing his surname correctly. And there's there's a arena, and on that arena 2 programs fight, written in a special language that reminds assembler.
No, it's news to me.
No. Okay. Still, very, very interesting notion as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So, like a software robot wars.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, that's cool. I remember when I graduated back in 2003, IBM had come up with this way of clustering servers together, where you could play a game. So you would play a game, let's say, I think it could have been Quake or something. It was something that had an open source version anyway. They had it running on it. And basically the map for the level was mapped out among the servers. So like one room was on one server, one set of rooms, another room was on another server. So if you were standing, say, in the corner of the map and you fired a rocket all the way down from one end of the game to the other, it was traveling through each server, and each server was taking over the processing job before handing it to the next processor and the next server. Mad stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
Interesting.
Okay, now this is sort of it's not really a discovery, but I got the Amiga Years, the book by Brian Bagnall, from my wife for Christmas, and amongst other things, and that's if the previous book was The Rise and Fall of Commodore, that was a great book, and there's lots of stuff to discover in there. So I'm looking forward to this now and learning a lot about the Amiga time in Commodore and what that was like, because it's there's a lot of interviews and it's a lot of chat with the people who were there at the time. So really looking forward to that.
Cool. That'll be nice. Nice prelude to David Pleasance's one coming out in a few weeks.
Absolutely, yeah. No, I can't wait for that one.
These books are like Rocky movies. The Amigos podcast have an online magazine called Kickstart, and it's available for free as a PDF download, and it's readable on smartphones, which is a really nice touch. And I don't even have a very big smartphone, so nice job, lads. It's well laid out. It's got plenty of a variety in it, like a piece, there's Amiga news from back in the day, and then some level maps, game reviews, hardware tips, and more, and that's just in that one issue. So yeah, it's cool. Check it out. The link is in the show notes. It's at everythingamiga.com. And that leads us on to community news and events.
Obviously, the first event to talk about is the Amiga Ireland meetup that we're having in Athlone in January. So we have to push that, and that's the 19th and 20th of January, and tickets are available on the website amigausers.ie, and we've got a good few guests that are turning up. We're going to record an episode of the podcast there, and we're going to have some games competitions, and we've been talking about it for ages, but we're going to talk about it some more. So yeah, come along. It's going to be awesome.
Indeed.
Nice. Retro Murcia 2.0 is happening in January 13th to January 14th. It's a retro culture room organised in the leisure centre Zigzag in Murcia, where you can find video game tournaments, free play zones, and much more. Freaky Days is an alternative culture show that takes place over several days at the Zigzag Leisure Centre as well, and we have a link to that in the show notes.
Now, the D-Halt or Die-Halt meeting is a festival of computer art, so I presume that's demos and other forms of electronic art, and that's going to take place 4th, 5th and 6th of January, and that is in Nizhny Novgorod. Now, apologies for that, but that's in Russia, as far as I know. This has been going on for, they've had more than 15 meetings so far, and it covers a lot of systems. So the Amiga is in there, but as well as that, we've got a lot of other retro systems and current systems, and that looks like it should be well worth a look. So there's a link in the show notes, dhalt.org.ru, and check it out if you happen to be up that way in the new year.
Cool.
And finally, I have to plug my own one again. This is happening on the 3rd of February. We have the Scottish Amiga Users Group meetup. So this is going to be a smallish thing, a few people meeting up in the St Ninian's Church Hall in Glasgow. And that is, that, like I said, it's going to happen on the 3rd of December, and you can check it out. There's a link in the show notes for the Scottish Amiga Users Facebook group, and you can get more details there.
Let's move on to Ask Amiga.
Now, there's a question that popped up on the Retro Computing Stack Exchange a little while ago, and it's basically concerning how Amiga accelerators work. And the question sort of, asking about how the CPUs don't, how do they behave themselves when they're being taken over. And it's, so there's a quote here says the Amiga 600's expansion port is only useful for memory expansions, and 68K is soldered to the motherboard. So instead, A600 accelerators function by being placed on top of the CPU. How does that work? So, and that's a fair point. A lot of the Amigas have a specific CPU slot or accelerator slot, but they actually all work in more or less the same way. It's not that well known, but the 68K family of processors is designed so that it can function in a multiprocessor system. So Amiga OS can't take advantage of that. It just doesn't have the back end for that, and the hardware doesn't support it either. But it does mean that the CPUs expect to talk to other CPUs and expect to share the bus with other CPUs. So that is used in some cases for things like bus mastering Zora boards and things like that. So it is supported on some Amiga systems, but not from a CPU perspective. But what the CPU does, or part of that mechanism, allows the CPU to be shut down. And basically what happens is the CPU listens for something else wanting the bus. And when it gets a request for that, it says, okay, you can have the bus, and it hands over control to the other device. And basically, in an accelerator, the accelerator CPU takes that control and never gives it back. And it's as simple as that. So the onboard CPU on the motherboard sits there idling, and it's still ticking away, but just waiting for control to be handed back to it, and that just never happens. So from that point on, the accelerator CPU is running the show, and just holds onto the bus, and that's it. So it's actually quite an elegant system, and you'd be forgiven for thinking that it just holds the reset pin of the CPU down or something like that, and something more primitive. But it's actually quite an elegant system, and it allows for a lot of creativity and expansion on the systems. But pretty much all the Amiga accelerators work the same way. So it works the same way on the 1200, works the same way on the the expansion port on the 1000 and 500. So it works. Yeah, that's the system, and it works that way on the 600.
Okay, interesting. So it's a different way of interfacing, but it's the same exchange.
Yeah, that's it. It's basically all the CPU buses are more or less the same, and they all include this facility as part of the 68K standard. So it's there to be exploited, even if you do have to tap into the board on the CPU itself.
Yeah, well, I have the Indivision AGA at home on the Amiga 1200, which lets me connect to DVI and stuff like that. And that clips straight on over the chip as well, so it sounds very similar.
Yeah, that's it. So, but yeah, and that's it. The thing with the A600, I think that's the specifics of the question, is that the CPU can't be removed, and it's still there underneath. It can't be disconnected. But that's it. It clips on, and it sort of hijacks the signals from there. But it's a perfectly, architecturally, it's a perfectly legal thing to do. It's just the connection to the chip is the only possible way to do it on the 600.
Okay, cool. Thanks for explaining that, Rob. I like this section. I learn something every time.
There you go.
Well, we've got some feedback this time. Although it wasn't really sent to us, I had to go looking for it. But I did find something on Amiga Pays.it where they were talking about the Amiga Ireland event, and Dr. Procton commented further down the thread and said, "This Irish user group is really doing great things for the Amiga community. Their podcast is timely, informed, objective and equipped with good audio quality." This is all in Italian, obviously, and I'm translating it from using Google, so you can excuse me if it's not quite right. It's becoming a reference point for Amiga news. Their conventions are always crowded, full of guests, and useful to the participants in the sense that, for example, you can learn to recap or do some soldering. Bravo. And he links to our podcast. So Dr. Procton, thank you so much for that. Grazie mille. No, I noticed nobody has necessarily agreed with him. That's the last comment on the thread. So
we'll take it. We'll take it.
We'll take it anyway.
Thank you.
I love the Google Translate on that though. It says, "I link you the podcast for those who chew English."
Oh yeah.
Is that some sort of like a dish?
Yeah. Tasty. But yeah, no,
tasty podcast.
Yeah. But yeah, you get the meaning, but it's a funny way of putting it.
Yeah. Google Translate is dodgy. It's really Yeah, mind you, it does tell you, and it's got approved translations where it gives you a little symbol of kind of a crest to say this one has been kind of approved. So I guess you can tell. But also thanks to everybody and anyone that's mentioned our events on their websites, blogs, social media, anywhere really. We see a lot of traffic coming into the site at the moment from various places who've been mentioning us and linking to us. So that's really appreciated.
And I should make a shout out to my little brother Tim, who has kindly given me a loan of his, pretty impressive audio setup here, so I can record this podcast when I'm away from home.
Nice one.
Thanks Tim.
Thank you, Rob's brother.
Cool. Well, that's goodbye from us for now. Music was by Virtual Dimensions and Banjo Gaiali, and this time we're going to play out with a really cool version of Apidia by Valcor X, and you can buy this album. It's part of the Project Paula album on bandcamp.com, and we've linked to it, and you can actually buy this for any amount, even zero, so we suggest being generous to them because it's a really good album.
Cool.
Okay, bye for now.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye, thank you.
sorry. Was my name before that? Was my name on that before?
No, I changed that. I did that on purpose. I thought you're going to be better to introducing Amiga Ireland, obviously.
That's fine, yeah. I'm not paying attention. There you go.
That's okay.
So, well done, Rob. That was good under pressure.
Sorry, I just had to do it. But you did really well.
I'll return the favour someday when he's least expecting it.
Exactly. Oh dear.